We are going to look at assignment of cloud computing for Savitribai Phule Pune University, MSc Computer Science. We'll sign up for AWS. We are not going to show that as part of this video. On the AWS Management Console, we'll sign in and we'll create a Ubuntu VM. Then we'll create a private public key pair to connect to this VM. We'll connect to the VM using putty and .ppk private key. We are going to use a Windows machine for this. After connecting to the VM, we'll install a web server. We'll install the Apache web server for this particular assignment. We'll edit the default index.html file, and then we'll edit the inbound rule on the AWS Management Console to allow port 80 so that we can connect to this port 80 where the Apache server is running. And we'll connect to this VM's public IP address to show the page for the Apache web server that is running. Okay, so that's it. And let's roll up our sleeves and get started. This is the AWS Management Console. So we'll navigate here a little bit. You can click on services. You'll see all services. So we want to go to EC2. So either you can go to compute and then you'll see EC2. So we'll click on EC2. So we are going to create the EC2 instance, the VM, Ubuntu VM, right? So we'll scroll down and we'll click on launch instance. We'll select launch instance from the menu. The name I'm going to give to this VM is my name, so Samir. Okay, then we'll scroll down a little bit. We are going to use the Ubuntu VM for this, right? This is free tier eligible, so we can do this from our free tier subscription of AWS, right? Let's keep it 64-bit T2 micro, right? This is free tier eligible. That's what we'll use. We don't need any heavy compute instances. So to connect to this VM, we have to use a key pair. So we'll create a new key pair for this particular assignment, right? So the name that we'll give is say lab key, and we'll use the RSA, right? We can use RSA of ED25519. So I'll use RSA. And so now you have to choose the type of private key that you want to have. So if you were on a Ubuntu or a Mac machine, then you'll use a .pem, right, to use with OpenSSH. Since I'm on a Windows machine, I'm going to use putty, so I'll use the .ppk as my private key. Okay, so after these selections, we'll scroll down and we'll create the key pair. Right, so the moment you create the key pair, it gets downloaded in your downloads folder on the local machine, right? So I'm going to launch this instance. Okay, this instance is created. So I go to this instance, right? And then you'll see that this is pending. So it's kind of now doing the deployment, right? So let's go back to our checklist. Right, so we signed up for AWS, we went into the management console, we created a Ubuntu VM, right? We created a private public key pair, we downloaded the private key on our machine, right? Now the next step is we are going to connect to the VM using this PPK, and since I'm on a Windows machine, I'll use the putty software. Okay, so now this is already running, so we should be able to connect. So let me open my putty software, right? So I go to putty, right? So this is from my previous session, so let me just sort of delete this, right? Now what I'll do is I will sort of save this session for future use as I did in the past, right? And from this AWS Management Console, you copy the public IP address. So this is the public IP address of your virtual machine, the Ubuntu virtual machine, right? So I've copied that, right? I save it here, right? Now for specifying the PPK, you have to click on the SSH, right? When you open up SSH, you will see the authentication. So you click on the authentication, then you go to browse, and my key is in the downloads folder, the lab key file. So I'll specify that. Okay. And again, for future use, I'll come back to this session and I will save this. Okay. So now this session is saved in putty. Now I'm going to open it to connect to the VM using my PPK, right? So I accept this. Now, since this is a Ubuntu VM, the login is Ubuntu. Voila. We are on the Ubuntu VM EC2 instance on uh, AWS. Okay. Now the next step is we logged in, right? Now we are going to install the Apache server, Apache web server on this. So I will say sudo apt install Apache 2. Okay. So now this web server is installed. The moment it is installed, it gets up and running, right? Now what we'll do is once now it's up and running, right? So now we'll try to connect to it from outside the AWS environment, right? So for that, again, I will copy the public IP address, right? And from my uh, Windows laptop, I'll try to connect to it, right? Now what should happen is, since the AWS environment is secure, right? We could connect to it using putty because of our private key that we had, right? That lab key.ppk that we had. However, since this is a secure environment, we shouldn't be able to connect to it from outside of AWS, right? So, and that's what it says. This site cannot be reached. It did not respond, and that's actually the standard reason, standard error, where since it did not allow connection, we could not reach. Okay, so now what we'll do is we will edit the inbound rule to allow the port 80. Okay, so how do I do that? So again, I go to my EC2 instance, right? uh, so this is my EC2 instance, right? That's what I am, right? So I'll go to the security tab, right? I'll scroll down again a little bit. So in the security tab, I'll see the security group. In the security group, these are the inbound rules. So I select the inbound rules and I scroll down again a little bit, right? Now these are the inbound rules, right? So it has a port 22 open. So this 0.0.0.0/0 means from any IP address. So from any IP address, you can connect to this port 22 of this particular EC2 instance. Okay, but we want to open port 80 uh, to connect to the Apache web server, right? So what I do is I clicked on edit inbound rules. So here I add the rule, right? And the port that I want to allow connection to is the port 80, and you can actually give your only IP address, but I'll just keep it open so that from any IP address I should be able to connect to it, right? And I say save rules. Okay, that's it. And now my port 80 of the EC2 instance is open, right? I should be able to connect to it. So let me refresh from my browser. Voila. And this is the default Apache 2 web server web page, right? But how do you know that this is your own uh, Apache web server? Maybe it's somebody else's, right, who accidentally opened it up for you. Okay, so what we'll do is we will again go back to our EC2 instance, right? And I'll edit the default index.html, right, which is in var www html index.html. Okay, so this is the entire 363 lines of HTML code for our Apache web server. So let me just delete this, right? And I will uh, give some specific message to say that this is our web server. So I'll say this is Samir's web server for cloud computing lab. Okay, so now if this shows up, then we are almost sure that this is our web server. Okay, so I edited this HTML and I saved it. Okay, and now what I'll do is I will refresh it again. Voila, this is Samir's web server for cloud computing lab. There we go. So we just completed our assignment where we signed up for AWS. We signed into the AWS Management Console, right? We created a Ubuntu VM. We created private public key pair. We connected to VM using putty and the .ppk. We installed the Apache web server on it. We edited the default index.html file, right? We edited the inbound rules to allow port 80, and we connected to it from our from outside of AWS from our Windows laptop. Okay, and that's it. We completed the assignment successfully. So what we'll do is before signing off, since this is like a free AWS, right? I'll just show clean up a little bit, right? So all that you have to do is you go to your we'll scroll up from this screen, right? Uh, I go to my or actually let's go to this tab. Uh, okay, so we'll again go back to our EC2 instance, right? Uh, and what we'll do is we'll select this EC2 instance, and from the instance state we'll say terminate, and it will clean up our EC2 instance. Okay, so it will shut it down and it will clean it up for us, right? Similarly, what we'll do is from this EC2 navigation pane, we'll go to our key pairs, right? And we'll search for our lab key, right? And we'll clean it up. So we'll select our lab key, and from the actions, I'll just delete it. And you have to type delete again to make sure that you really want to delete. That's it. So we completed not only completed our assignment, but we cleaned up ourselves after the assignment. Okay, so good luck with your assignment. Good luck with your cloud computing course. And if you like this video, please click the like button here, share it with your friends, and looking forward to working with you more going forward. Thank you. Bye.